Yasher koach, Aiden. Thank you for these very thoughtful words for your teaching that explored our parsha in relationship to two big ideas: anger and its devastating consequences, and the passing of leadership from generation to generation, lador vador. You made the case that Moses was blinded by anger at the people when they stood at Meribah. And it was this very human quality of anger that we can all relate to that caused him to hit the rock instead of speaking to it, which is what prevented him from achieving his lifelong goal of entering the promised land. Then you considered whether it wasn't really a punishment to prevent Moses from entering the land, but whether it was just time, whether the time had come for him to retire and pass leadership to the next generation. Maybe he no longer had the clarity of vision or the patience or the wisdom to lead our people. I found your words to be highly relevant to the moment we are facing. This is an excruciating time for the Jewish people. We are facing frightening anti-Semitism on the left and on the right. We are facing the weaponization of anti-Semitism as a cynical tool to weaken democratic institutions and violate the civil liberties of vulnerable populations, which of course also makes Jews less safe. We are seeing an anti-Zionist movement whose rhetoric has led to two recent acts of deadly violence against Jews. And we are seeing an Israeli government whose leadership is so hardened and blinded by unbridled anger that it is choosing not to bring home the hostages, but instead to continue to prosecute a war that is riddled with crimes against humanity, against the advice of its own military, all in the name of the Jewish people. Now let me be clear. Hamas is a profoundly immoral organization dedicated to the elimination of the Israeli people, has declared multiple times that it will commit more October 7th every chance it gets, continues to hold innocent hostages more than 670 days since kidnapping them, is stealing food aid, and in multiple ways sacrifices its own people as an intentional strategy. All of that is true. However, we are seeing with our own eyes the devastating toll of unchecked anger among our own people. We are seeing our people blinded by trauma and fear and, yes, anger to such a degree that many cannot see the war crimes being committed in our name. We see our people denying that Gazans are starving. We see them evading responsibility for almost 2 years of mass displacement, starvation, and death. We see them so hardened against the Palestinian people that they demonize and dehumanize the innocent along with the guilty, that they justify collective punishment, that they even justify the death of children, calling them, quote, future terrorists. Aiden, you focused on the very first verse of the Parsha in which Moses tells us of his pleas to God to allow him to enter the promised land. And the Parsha goes on to show Moses using many different rhetorical approaches to try to convince and impress upon the Israelites that they must follow God's teachings when they live in the promised land. His efforts include a retelling of the experience of standing at Mount Sinai, a restating of the Ten Commandments, and his introduction of the first paragraph of the Shema, which you chanted, "Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. You must love Adonai your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your being. Inscribe these words upon your heart. Teach them to your children." We know this. We know these words. Demonstrate to the world what a society looks like that lives by the rules of laws and ethics based in a commitment to human dignity. Israel is supposed to be a real-life example of God's values in action. And if you were to ask, can you sum up what Torah is telling us God's values in action are all about? Well, I can. Again and again, Moses says, remember that this is the God who freed you from Pharaoh. Pharaoh is the anti-hero. God's values are those values whose absence defines Pharaoh's rule. These values are that every human being is created in the image of God, and therefore every human life has infinite value. That human diversity is part of the plan and evidence of God's majesty, and human beings are equal to one another. That no human being or group of human beings has the right to oppress another, to restrict their freedom, to deprive them of the ingredients for life and thriving, food, water, shelter, healthcare. That the Israelites in particular, given our history of being victimized in this very way, must remember to not ever oppress the stranger, but to love the stranger, to feed the hungry, to care for the sick, to free the captive, to never stand idly by the blood of our neighbor, to protest and rebuke injustice and sin, to be sensitized to human vulnerability and to prevent poverty, to walk in God's ways, in humility and in compassion. In short, to always choose actions that will defend and enhance human life. Aidan, you said, perhaps we can learn from my Torah portion that there comes a time when we should step down and make room for the next generation. Many are describing a generational divide among our people here in the United States. And look at this beautiful next generation right here exploring the front of the sanctuary. Our legacy organizations in this country are mostly led by a generation who have been hardened, as Moses was at that rock, in a way that is preventing them from seeing clearly what is happening and what leadership looks like in this moment. Many are failing to condemn the starvation of children in Gaza. Many are failing to oppose the Israeli government's most recent choice to continue the war and take Gaza City, even though the IDF and the Israeli people are pleading for a hostage deal and to end the war instead. Many of our leaders in this country are tacitly and openly supporting the use of our legitimate fear of anti-Semitism as a weapon to dismantle democracy. Many are failing to see even what loyalty to Israel looks like. Loyalty to Israel is not defending war crimes. Loyalty to Israel is doing everything possible to hasten the end of this government. Not only are many of these leaders failing to lead, they're also undermining those in the next generation who are leading, calling them anti-Semites for criticizing Israel's behavior. In short, the leaders of our legacy organizations, the ones who are behaving in this way, are standing for death and not standing for life. On the other hand, some in the youngest generations are reacting so strongly to the horrors they see that they are advocating that Israel should not exist as a Jewish state at all. There are three big problems with this. First, we have absolutely no evidence that the world is safe for Jews without a state of our own. The current evidence of rapidly escalating anti-Semitism on both right and left tells us the opposite, that the Jewish people very much continue to need a safe haven in the world. Second, there are 6 million Jewish Israelis living in Israel, with this, which is their homeland, with nowhere else in the world to go. All Jewish leaders and all Jews must be dedicated to ensuring their safety just as much as we care about Palestinian safety, which is so grievously and unacceptably lacking right now. And third, many countries on earth have committed heinous sins, but we do not conclude that therefore they should not exist. Not even Germany faced such a campaign after World War II. So just on the basis of fairness and the recognition of the human rights and dignity of all people, including Jews, must bring us to the conclusion that all calls for the end of the one Jewish state on earth are wrong. We need leaders who can both hold our own people accountable with honesty and integrity, stand clearly for the freedom, equality, and safety of Palestinians, and stand for our own people's safety and well-being as well. This Shabbat is named for the Haftarah you just read, Aidan, from the prophet Isaiah, as we heard, who begins, Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami, be comforted, Be comforted, my people. We always read this passage on the Shabbat after Tisha B'Av, as Leslie said. On Tisha B'Av, we mourn the expulsion of our people from the land of Israel in the years 586 BCE and the year 70 CE, which our tradition understands as having been caused by our sins. Isaiah is offering us words of comfort in our anguish at all of the destruction that has been wrought by our own hands. He goes on to say, lift up your eyes and see who made these, describing God as the creator of everything from the stars in the sky to all living things on the earth. Every living thing, every human life comes from God. Nachamu, nachamu ami. Let us be comforted and healed in our trauma, in our fear, in our anger, so that immediately, now, we can see the terrible destruction we are wreaking with our own hands. So that immediately, now, and forevermore, we will use our words and our actions always and only for life. Ken Yiratzon.